Welcome, Steve, to the Prestigio Leadership Forum. How are you today?
Eduardo, I'm fantastic. How are you?
Very well, very well. From where are you talking? Where are you based now?
I am in San Diego, California today.
San Diego, California, early in the morning. That's great, great. Well, we're really having a great event. Yesterday was very moving. Today we started with conscious capitalism, and we are ready to rock it. So the stage is all yours.
All right, fantastic, Eduardo. And I'm excited to be part of the journey here and the conversation, thinking about the future of work. And my goodness, after listening to the last speaker, this is going to be a big change in some respect, and it's going to be a lot of similarity in another. I have my partners on the other end who are going to be helping move the slides. So let's get started with the click on the next slide, please. When we think about the landscape of work, one of the things that's really interesting to me is that in the employer and employee relationship today, both parties have more information about each other to make the best career choices of their lifetimes. But somehow, what we're finding is even though both parties could make the smartest hires and the smartest choices of what companies to join, we're finding more people are actively disengaged and more people are actively dissatisfied with their job than ever before. And it shouldn't make sense. That doesn't make sense because both parties should be able to make great choices around where they're going to work and what they're going to do. So this is the riddle, the problem, the puzzle that I've been trying to solve when we think about the future of work. Wow, more choice, more opportunity, more ways of making better decisions. We should see people enjoying work more and feeling more fulfilled. But that's not what we're seeing. So what's going on? Next slide. One of the first places that I looked at was something around tenure. And that is how long people are staying in companies. And having worked in every corner of the world the last 10 years, I'm seeing the same trend. People are staying in companies less than ever before. People are moving, changing organizations. This is United States data, which shows in the last 6, 7 years, people have moved from 5 years in a company to about 4 years in a company. And if we click the next button, I'm going to show you that people between the ages of 50 plus are staying about 10 years. And when I show you the next group of age group of 25 to 35, how long do you think those people are staying in organizations? So let's click 2.8 years. That's right. 2.8 years. You're leaving? We just hired you. And that's the median, which means in the United States, half of the population in that age is staying less than 3 years. And I work in Silicon Valley. I work a lot with technology companies. They don't celebrate 10-year anniversaries anymore. They celebrate 10 months. You're here 10 months. Let's have a celebration. And what's interesting about this is when I ask leaders around the world, is this a trend that you see? And they say, yes, it is. Maybe the numbers are a little different, but that's the trend. People are leaving faster. Do you see, I ask next, do you see this changing over time? Do you think in 2 years, 3 years, people will stay in organizations longer? And the answer is no. Everyone that I ask about this, in every industry and geography around the world, believes this is going to continue, that we will continue to see people stay in organizations less and less time. And that feels scary and unsatisfying. How do we create value? How do we build successful entities and organizations when people are not staying as long? Because we have believed that to be successful, to deliver consistent results, we need people to stay a long time. So let's click to the next slide, if we would please. Even move on one more. And so nobody believes this is going to change. So if you click 3 times, please, and we're going to see 3 different circles come up. One of the really interesting parts in the world of work today is that if we look at jobs and careers from the perspective of the younger workforce, it's very confusing. We have new industries, we have electric cars, gig work, we have companies that are didn't exist 25 years ago, creating whole new industries and subsequently whole new career choices for people. And while all that's happening in the last 2 decades, old industries that used to be the most respected companies, particularly in the United States, General Electric, are dying. General Electric in the last 20 years has lost almost $1 trillion of market cap. The most respected, revered, the most admired leadership team in American business history lost $1 trillion of value in the last 20 years. So when people are trying to decide where should I work, what industry, what company, it's confusing. And this is part of the new reality that we all have to face as leaders. That candidates have more information to make good choices, but they also have more information to worry about making the wrong choice. Or after making the choice, being concerned that maybe there's some other place that's better. And so, if you ask anyone who's in the world of sales, it is so much easier to sell to someone with 3 choices than 500. And this is causing confusion. This, in part, is why people are changing jobs. This, in part, is why people are not feeling satisfied because maybe I think I made a good choice in this company, but maybe I didn't make a good choice because I can see more today of what I don't have in a job. And how we process all this new information is at a minimum causing confusion, and in a worst case scenario, causing severe anxiety for a lot of people. Next slide. For me, I don't know about your personal habits, but on the weekends, I love to watch movies with my family. And sometimes what I think happens for careers is what happens when my family decides to choose a movie. We sit down, we open up a Netflix or an Amazon Prime or Apple movie, and we spend 3 hours debating which movie we should watch: drama, comedy, action adventure, a documentary, and we don't make a choice. And I feel like that experience is very similar to what people are thinking about when choosing careers. It's confusing and it's hard. We have so much choice. Next slide, please. Employers and employees have a very, very similar problem. And again, this feels a little bit unsettling. If we could click again, please. Both parties have the same issue. They don't know what skills they need for tomorrow. We have some idea, but many students, many professionals are concerned that maybe they're not building the right skills. And many companies are concerned that they need to grow the new skills so that they can be more competitive in the future and they can have teams using the latest and greatest technology. It's interesting, isn't it? Both parties have the same problem. They don't know what skills they need. And I deal with many of the major universities in the world preparing students for the world of work, and they're frustrated because they say, Steve, we ask the business, what skills should we teach our students? And the business says, we're not sure. And then the business blames universities. You're not preparing our students for the future. And the university is saying, well, you don't know what skills you need. So it's an interesting challenge that we have as the pace of technology advances and our ability to build the skills far lags behind the pace of change and the pace of technology. Next slide, please. Now, one of the interesting things when we think about where we have been in the world of work and where we are going is we used to build companies to be reliable, consistent, and to get predictable outcomes. And today, I would argue we have something that I will call cognitive dissonance. Today, the measure of our success is not how we build for consistency, it's how we build for inconsistency and how well we can weather instability. How can we perform during a pandemic or an economic recession? This is fundamentally frustrating businesses. Businesses were built to be steady, to do the same thing over long periods of time. That's why we wanted people to stay in our companies a long time. because we want to be reliable and we want to build trust over time. But now things are changing so fast, that way of working doesn't fit anymore. It doesn't fit and it's not feeling as consistent as it can be. Next slide, please. So, what we're facing now in the midst of this pandemic, we are not through. We are not through. The ground is not firm yet. We are still going through many, many changes and challenges. But we're facing what I call the greatest career migration. In the world of work in the United States right now, more people have voluntarily resigned and quit their jobs than in any 2 months that since we've been measuring this. Unbelievable. And more people are leaving not just their job, they're leaving their profession and doing different things. And the pandemic has served as a wake up call for so many people to see the world differently. Next slide, please. We're facing what I call a work quake. This is a book that I just published 2 months ago. Everything that we've thought that we've built about work was built for a slow pace of work. And we don't have a slow pace. Markets are changing. Competitors can come out of nowhere. Look at that slide where I had all the circles going around. Half of those companies haven't even been around 20 years. And they're some of the most valuable companies in the world. The model of slow and gradual, the org designs, the architecture of business was not built to sustain the speed that we're working at today. Next slide, please. And so, what does that mean? Well, what it means is we have another problem. When we're talking about marketing the future of work to our employees, to the population of workers, we are scaring them. All the future, everyone says, is about technology. All the future is about robots and artificial intelligence. We're not saying the future is about being more human. That story is getting lost because of our obsession and seduction with technology. But every business leader will tell you, without people, we're nothing. Then I ask, well, then why are you talking about your technology more than you're talking about your people? So we need to be very, very careful. For us to find a new model of work, I think the discussion needs to shift to becoming more human and putting the human being at the center of this. Next slide, please. So, what all this change and all this rapid advancement of technology, I think, is causing fear among the workforce. We have a lot of information, it's causing anxiety. And I believe that the psychology of the workforce is shifting from job security used to be being in one place and being stationary. That was safe. And today it's moving. Next slide. Today, job security is different. Job security is movement. The more I move, the more I learn, the more I meet new people, the bigger my network becomes, the more powerful and safe I have in thinking about my career and my future. The more valuable I become, the more knowledge I have, the more people I meet, and the more my network is. And people are starting to believe, the workforce is starting to believe that the longer I stay in one place, the slower I'm learning, the less adaptable I'm becoming because I'm not having to adapt to new environments. So if you have a big organization, I challenge you, are you moving your people enough? Are you building the ability for them to adapt, to make them feel safer? Are you caring about your people for their career? Or are you only caring about them when they work for you? Next slide, please. The notion of loyalty has always been a popular notion in the world of business and the world of work. And people say, well, we want people who are loyal to us, the company. And the workforce is telling us something different. Next slide. The workforce is telling us that loyalty to them today is their learning. I'm loyal to my learning. I'm not loyal to your company. I'm loyal to you if I'm learning and I'm growing and you're making me better for tomorrow. That's what loyalty is about. Next slide, please. One of the things that I pay a lot of attention to is tenure. Is it really true that the longer you stay, the higher performing your organization is? If you look at this slide, we have some of the most successful and profitable organizations in the world of technology. Most of them have not been around over 25 years. And look at how long people are staying here. The longest is Facebook people staying around 2 years. Now, the data is skewed a little bit because companies are, when they grow really fast, the tenure comes down. But we can't say that people staying a long time is why these companies are succeeding. Maybe we've overvalued people staying a long time. And maybe new people with new ideas, new ways of solving new ways of solving problems is valuable. Or maybe it's more valuable than having people stay a long period of time. Okay, next slide, please. Now, outside of the world of technology, let's take the automobile industry, which has been around for about 100 years now. Look at the company that's worth more than any other company in the automobile industry. It's the newest, it's the one that's most different. And what investors are saying is, I believe Tesla can invent and create faster than their peers because they're new. They have new ideas, they're taking a different approach. Is that happening in your industry? Just something to think about. Next slide, please. I believe we need to think of a different leadership model. The leadership model of command and control and slow pace doesn't work. The model of come here and stay here a long time and I'll commit to keep you here a long time is broken. No one believes that anymore. Next slide, please. We have a broken model of work because it's fitting an old time when it took a long time to build things, when things didn't change as fast. We need to build something new. And guess what? The pandemic has given us the best chance of our lifetime to build something better, something more meaningful. Isn't technology here to make our lives richer? Do you feel like your life is richer because of more technology, or do you feel more behind, more aware of what you're missing? We need to take control more than we have been and build something better. The pandemic has given us the greatest chance of our lifetime. So, next slide, please. Let's talk about right now the part of the world where arguably, and it's a debate, arguably the most successful, the most valuable, and the most innovative companies in the world are being created. Many people would say Silicon Valley. I'm not saying Silicon Valley is perfect, please. There's lots that's wrong with Silicon Valley. But if we click again, please, what's interesting is Silicon Valley is arguably the most innovative part of the world and the part of the world producing the most successful companies. It's also the part of the world experiencing the highest degree of turnover, people changing jobs. So what's happening that's causing that? Because people say, well, don't we need a long time to build trust? Don't we need a long time to build relationships, something meaningful? Well, it just so happens when people are changing jobs, ideas are growing. People are sharing new ideas. And when I sat at LinkedIn, we were going through fast-paced growth, and we got the leadership team together, and we had a problem. The CEO would look around the room and say, when you were at Google, how did you solve this problem? Steve, when you were at Cisco, how did you solve this problem? Erica, when you were at Adobe, how did you solve this problem? We gathered all the knowledge we had from other places we'd work to solve our problems. Okay, let's click again. There's a book about this if you're interested around where the origin of Silicon Valley. It's called Regional Advantage. Very, very interesting and worth checking out. Okay, next slide. So we're in this period right now of transition, and I would say if you click again, please, I would say that the best practice today is experimentation. Should you stay at home? Should you go back to the office? Should you come up with some sort of hybrid? I don't know the answer, and you don't know the answer until you try. And to the extent that your business can afford to experiment, I strongly encourage you to do that. What the future of work is needs to include conversations with your people who are doing the work. Let's not forget that. Next slide, please. Now, I want to also offer you, there is an entire industry that has been built to expect people to leave and to actually benefit when people leave. If we click the next slide, I'll show it to you. It's the consulting industry. Not every job in the consulting industry, but most of them. The model is come here, work a few years, we're going to make you better. And the better the job you get when you leave, the better I can recruit new people because they show I made you better for your future. And I make more money when I have younger, inexperienced talent because the longer you stay, the more I have to charge the client, the less money I make. They're making a profit and valuing and building to expect people to leave. Is that something in some parts of your work and your business that you can entertain? Next click, please. The other industry, obviously, is the Hollywood kind of industry, which is project based. We come together, we make something, and then we go our ways. I'm starting to see companies build in ways that allow this to happen. Next slide, please. So if you believe what I said earlier in the presentation, people are staying in organizations longer. The logic test would suggest then that you have more people that used to work for your company than at any time in history. If that's true, what are you doing to curate, to nurture, to build community with the people that used to work with you and use them and leverage them? I worked at LinkedIn 8 years ago, and they still communicate with me, inviting me to lunches, inviting me to help them design new products. So next slide, please. So I would argue many of us that build companies, like, we need to retain our people. Yes, that's important. But you know what's more important than that? Click the next slide. Is not just retaining employees, it's caring about them for the entirety of their career, not just caring about them when they work for you. I think we need to shift from retaining our employees to retaining our relationships. Next slide, please. Just a couple of points in closing, Eduardo, and then I want to turn it over to you. I know this is hard for all of us. None of us were wishing the pandemic on ourselves, but we have an opportunity now to build the most important skill that every CEO, every leader wants: more adaptability and more agility. That's going to define our success. And in moments of crisis, we learn what people are made of. Next slide, please. It just so happens when we look back in time and we see the last economic crisis the world faced was the second mortgage crisis of 2008. Banks collapsed, people lost homes, people lost jobs. More new unicorns were founded during that time than any time before. Why? Because it just so happens in hard times, we get more innovative. So next slide, please. What I'd like to say to you in closing, we have the greatest opportunity of our lifetime to not go back to what we were before, to build something better, something stronger, something more vital. And I encourage you to join me in the challenge of building a better new future of work. Thank you so much for your time today. I apologize that I don't have enough Spanish to carry this off in Spanish. And Eduardo, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Steve. You have the passion, you have all the drive. So language is not a problem. We really are with our hearts fired up. I have like an hour and a half of questions, and they're coming in from the social networks. But let me first, before getting to the questions, say what I understood from you. I heard the challenge is to create value. For 100 years, the value was created and the knowledge to create that value in companies. I would even say the processes, the machines, and even the job functions where the value was. That was old. That was old. Today, the value is in the people. So if the value is in the people, what we need is constant learning, but also ways of getting constant learning, but also ways of getting that knowledge around. So I have two questions about that. First, do you agree that that's a little bit of what we heard from you? The knowledge is no longer in the companies, but in the people. So now we need to see how we get that knowledge across in a new team. First question would be, you talked about the new set of skills to share that knowledge. What are those skills? I can think of humility, curiosity, empathy, capacity of listening, but tell me a little bit of what are those skills? And the second question, if you want, is in that drive for learning, how and who should curate the learning we need? For one, this whole event is something we curated to a community because that's what we believe that should learn. But is that good enough? How should we curate that learning? Steve. Steve, are you? Steve needs to answer that question. If you heard it. Okay, Steve is no longer on board with us, but that's. I found it very, very interesting. We do have some people from the audience. If you want to put her on and we can hear her question. Okay, there we have the most recent, that's just recent news. We have Rassi Sodia, who really enlightened us with conscious capitalism. Marcelo Scaglione, who will be here with us tomorrow, is sharing. We have the agenda for the day, but we do have the challenge to bring Steve back. Can we hear the question someone from the audience has? And we'll bring her back when Steve is in, but let's hear. No, she's not in. Okay. Well, let me share my thoughts with you while we wait till Steve is back. Y quizás lo podemos hacer en español hasta que vuelva Steve. Él realmente planteó de que estábamos todos para cambiar, de que el knowledge, de que el conocimiento está en las compañías, a que está en las personas. Y que la fuente de creación más importante no viene de una compañía de 100 años, sino de personas con distintas experiencias. And I think
Eduardo, sorry, I dropped off. I'm back. I'm so sorry.
Well, let me, I don't know, I made a statement that what I had heard from you was that knowledge is no longer in the companies, but in the people. And that should enable us to organize very differently. If that is so, what are the skills necessary for people to share that knowledge? I can think of curiosity, the ability of listening, the ability of conversations, the ability of learning, but what are those abilities to extract the knowledge from people that get into new projects in new companies?
Yeah, I think I call it learning velocity. One of the most important skills that we all need to grow, we all need to build on our own, is the capacity to learn new things and apply them quickly. And to your point, organizations are going to need to find ways of onboarding people quickly and changing jobs, architecting and engineering jobs in ways that don't require 6 months for someone to learn how to do it. We're going to have to decouple it. We're going to have fewer dependencies on one person. And if we share it, that way, if someone changes or someone moves, we don't get hurt. And this is the one challenge I see in a world where you're expecting people to stay a long time and you've architected deep, deep experience needed to get your work done. That's going to hurt you when you can't find someone or you can't get them up to speed. So I think that speed of finding ways of faster communication, designing jobs and work differently so that if it takes 6 months, for example, to someone to learn how to do something, I think you want to change that job and get people up there quickly and deliver learning on the job so people feel more engaged in wanting to stay longer periods of time.
Okay, but what are the skills we need to train people on? You talked about new skills. What are those new skills so that we get into those new ways of working?
Probably the capacity to, I mean, there is no specific skill. It's all, for me, it's what I call power skills.
Power skills.
It's not the hard skills. It's communication. You hit them. It's communication. It's listening. It's empathy. Do you know why I believe that we still struggle with things like diversity? Because we don't know how to have the conversation about it. We don't know how to talk about hard things. We avoid anything that has any kind of emotional potential attachment to that. So that's a big skill, I believe, talking about hard stuff and being able to process information quickly, right? Your adaptability and absorption of knowledge and being able to share that. Those are the real power skills of the future, I believe.
Okay. One thing it's a real challenge and will be a theme in the forum for the 3 days is culture. If you get that high turnover, aren't you losing the power of culture? Or the question could be phrased the other way around. How do you keep the power of culture with such a high turnover?
Well, let me reframe the whole idea behind the question. If your assumption is our culture needs to be people stay a long time, yeah, you're going to. But if you look at some of those high technology companies that I put there and said, our culture is new people and new ideas and energy and unlocking that in newness, and we accept the world can be more successful in a more fluid world, you won't be disappointed. You won't be frustrated. If everyone believes, and most people do, people are not going to stay as long in the future. I think if we reject that or deny it or pretend it's not happening, we're missing an opportunity to build a world and a business and cultures that can accept and welcome new people. Isn't that the diversity mandate right there? New people and new ideas solving problems differently. And too many organizations that I work with, Eduardo, they assume that unless you've worked here 10 years, you don't know what you're talking about. And look what Tesla just did to the automobile industry, which is a cultural model of you have to be here a long time. We're a very complex business, and you can't make any decisions that matter until you've understood our work, and it's probably going to take you 5 years. Well, what did Tesla do? It said, that's not needed, and we can build it a different way. And I'm not saying, Eduardo, this is going to work for everyone. It's hard and it's different, but we have an opportunity now. Everyone's working differently. Many people are in hybrid roles or remote roles. And guess what? A lot of organizations I'm working with are seeing as similar results or better results in a world that feels more crazy and uncomfortable. So we can do this. We can do this. I believe it.
I love that answer because that means that we have to put our passion, and I believe that culture is wherever we put our sense of purpose, our passion, a sense of belonging, or pride, into those dimensions that are aligned with a new context and our strategy. So if change is our strategy, let's be excited about change. Let's be excited about getting new people up and running quickly into our culture. I have a last question from the audience directly. I'll jump her on stage. Please, production, if we can do that now. Yes. Hello, how are you? Where are you talking us from? What's your name?
Hi, my name is Pamela.
Okay,
yes,
Pamela.
and my question for Steve is, we're living in a moment that requires a new way of personal and collective adaptation. And our goal as team leaders in this new normal of hybrid work is challenging. So, what will you recommend to human resources personnel in order to lead during this tense situation?
Pamela, thank you for the question, and thank you for being brave to come on camera and to ask such a really important question. You know, the pandemic has been very hard and has caused a lot of pain for a lot of people. But as an optimist, I look at what have we learned from our colleagues during the pandemic. We've learned more about each other as people, not just coworkers. I'm looking in your house. I'm on a Zoom. I'm on a Google Hangout. I'm on a Skype or some kind of video chat in your home. I need to know more about you because if something is wrong in your family, your kids aren't learning, someone is sick, someone is worried about getting sick, you can't do your work. And so one of the best things that I think I would offer as advice for human resource leaders is let's use this opportunity of us learning about more about each other as humans, not just coworkers, as humans, to build better cultures and better models that carry forward, that we keep these close bonds of this shared very, very difficult experience that we're going through together. So that means more communication, more actively sharing ideas and caring about each other in deeper ways than just the job and the goals and the objectives. that's probably there's many more things that I would add, but that's probably the biggest one that I think of, Pamela.
I love that.
Thank you.
I love that. And let's really be focused on the people wholeheartedly. Thank you very much, Pamela. And thank you very much, Steve.
Thank
We're
you.
really looking forward to read the book, to stay up and running on all the news you bring for us. So
Thank you so much.
thank you. We'll be in touch again soon. Cheers.